We ran into a small technical issue with the invitation, so we're going to give folks a few more minutes to make sure they're getting the right invitation in their inbox before they join us. So we'll get started right away, and thank you for coming. Thank you for joining. Well, hello everybody. Why don't we get started? I'll do a quick introduction for myself. I'm going to go through a little bit of a CDW security, sort of a refresher for some folks. I recognize some names here already on this webinar. I'm going to do a quick reintroduction or a refresh on CDW security and what we've been up to from a Palo Alto perspective, and then I'm going to hand things over to Don, who's going to kick us into the meat of what we're talking about here, which is stepping up your SASE game with CDW and Palo Alto. Well, without further ado, I'll get started. My name's Ivo Wiens. I'm a senior manager security solutions architecture at CDW Canada. What this means is I have all the security architects at CDW, which are now almost 20 security solution architects focused specifically on helping clients, and I'll go through what they do on a day-to-day basis. That team reports to me, but I also help with the overall security practice for CDW Canada. So I help set the stage and set the services we deliver and the products we deliver and the amazing partnerships that we build with companies like Palo Alto Networks. So that's my day-to-day job. So before we get started, I always like to put this slide up because it really talks about the why. Why CDW does this from a security perspective. What is our purpose really on a day-to-day basis? And it's really to help customers, not just in security, but outside security as well, help customers achieve their goals by providing them with the technology and advice and products they need when they need them. And that's an important piece, really tied into the business, tied into what business means. And as my team, we believe that risk and user experience must drive security decisions. Security decisions shouldn't be made on a technical side alone or on a business side alone, but they need to work together. And that technical decisions need to be made from a sound security approach. So really looking at making those technical decisions because it makes sense from a business perspective. And then really thinking that technology, people, and process are equally important as a magic triangle of making security work within an organization. You can't lean too heavily on one versus the other. They all need to balance really well. And that's why we're here, and that's why CDW Security does what we do. When people ask me what is it that you do, what are the things that you do, this has been our mantra for a number of years and continues to be prepare, defend, respond, sort of a little bit lined up to the NIST framework, but really looking to describe what we do here. And we want to make sure we cover all these areas to provide that real breadth of services and products for our clients. So On the prepare side, we really help clients understand risks, build effective security programs, and make sure that they have the right people to solve the problems within their organization. This can range from technical penetration testing that we're really great at, right down to writing security policies on the compliance side and taking and doing that whole risk assessment for clients and helping them build that security roadmap. So then they can move on to the next phase, which is really to defend, right? Now that you identify the control gaps, where the gaps are in your environment, how do we bring the right controls into place? And that's what we want to help here. And that's where my team starts to come in. So we actually help identify what technology makes sense within your environment, how to implement those technologies. Do you need to improve something that you already have within your environment, or do you need to rip and replace and choose the right technology and make sure you're choosing the right product to implement it and make sure that it fits within the people and process of your environment. So that's what we do on that defend column. Identify the right products and make sure they're configured right. So we have a professional services team that helps with implementation, and I'll go into a little more detail on what we do for Palo Alto under our professional services side. And on the response side is operationalizing all this, right? On a day-to-day basis, who's going to monitor and who's going to manage the technology when it goes live? And that's where we bring our security operations center, Canadian-based security operations center, to monitor those critical assets, manage them on a day-to-day basis, and respond to the incidents as they happen. Really, the goal here is to continuously validate the security controls. So prepare, defend, respond is how I think about it and how I usually break it down when people ask me, what is it that you do at CDW from a security perspective? CDW and Palo Alto have had a fantastic history together. We are, we're Palo Alto's #1 partner in Canada by revenue for the last 4 years. We've been partner of the year for Palo Alto for the last 4 years. We're Canadian Diamond Partner, Global Partner of the Year. We have a lot of certifications. We have a lot of pre-sales resources in my teams that we continue to grow on knowledge of the Palo Alto stack. And we have specialization and an ability to manage and train Palo Alto technology. So we've been Palo Alto partners since almost near the very beginning, and we continue to be the biggest partner for Palo Alto across the country. From a professional services perspective, what do we do with Palo Alto Networks? And what I really want to cover here is we have abilities within all 3 pieces of the platform, be it the Strata, the Cortex, or the Prisma area. So that covers a lot of different technologies, as you can imagine. So it takes a lot of investment from our perspective to make sure that we have the right professional services resources that are shadowing when we don't know a technology, shadowing with the Palo Alto team on those first edge installations, but also continuing to do them on our own after that. So we have the really great partnership when it comes to implementation services. Obviously, on historically very strong on the Strata side, on the firewall side, and that's where we cut our teeth. But we continue to expand as well with our Cortex services and implementation of the Cortex services, and also on the Prisma side, not just with cloud security posture assessment side of the house, but also with cloud workload protection as well. So what do? We do great implementation. That's our bread and butter. We help Palo Alto get into clients and build their environments and make sure their environments are well built from not just day 1, but also day 10, day 30, day 365, right? Make sure that everything is documented and well run from a rapid deployment implementation, from a design perspective, and also once you already have that technology in your environment, we can also do security lifecycle reviews. And I know a lot of Palo Alto clients, you can go and do your own assessment of your environment, take a look at what's happening there with their tools. We bring that value add by being able to do it with people who have implemented this multiple times within the last few years, right? Lots of knowledge, lots of experience, and they can help you through be it that best practice assessment or be it looking at a security lifecycle review, a health check, and remediation, tuning, and optimization of what you have deployed within the environment. And then when it comes to training, obviously when we do implementations, we make that knowledge transfer. We bring that knowledge transfer to your team. We are the only PAN-authorized training center in Canada. And we also bring another aspect of implementation that is really important, which is that third-party technology expertise. So as CDW Canada, we obviously have a lot of knowledge of Palo Alto, but we also know the adjacent technologies on the switching and routing side, and we have tons of experience on that side of the house, if necessary, be it on Azure configuration and Azure migration, if you're deploying your Palo Alto workloads in Azure or Google or AWS, right? So having that third-party knowledge also allows us to look at the bigger picture beyond the Palo Alto platform. And when it comes to managed services, we continue to grow this catalog. There will be more columns coming very soon, as in what we can manage and what we can run from a Palo Alto technology perspective. So on the Strata side, obviously we do the managed firewall. We have a managed Prisma Access and managed Prisma SD-WAN service, and recently launched as well as a managed Cortex XDR service that layers on an MDR capability on top of your existing Cortex XDR. So. And finally, I think last but not least, I want to do a quick plug for what my team does. So we are, these CDW solution architects are here as a value add to clients to really help them carry from that. Now that I understand the pulse of my organization, I need to buy something, and I need to make sure I'm buying the right thing. So, while, we are, a lot of people on my team have even more than 10, sometimes 20 years experience in the field, really experienced architects that can help you to make the right decision within your environment. So we have the vendor knowledge, certification, training I talked about, but also the experience with doing architecture and really coming from the deployment side of the house to help you scope and make sure things are implemented right. And there's a fantastic value here, which is us doing proof of concepts, reviewing your existing orders. Even if you are well versed in making your own order from a technology perspective, and you need another set of eyes, the CDW architects are really helpful there, and that's where we can help bring that expert validation and purchase to your projects. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Don, who is the director for product marketing for Prisma Access, Prisma SASE at Palo Alto Networks. Don, how was that intro?
Yeah, the intro was fantastic. It's going to be a hard act to follow, I'll tell you that.
Oh, no, all good. It's easy to talk about us, but I'm looking forward to seeing your slides and seeing your presentation. There we go.
Perfect. All right. Well, Ivo, thank you so much for the opportunity. And obviously, everyone who's with us today, super, super excited to share with you the information that we have. We're super honored to be able to share this with our partners, CDW, and just provide some really interesting ways to start thinking about what we can do to modernize our infrastructure to really start accommodating for some interesting challenges that we're facing today. And as we start looking at what those challenges mean, how do we incorporate the right types of not only technologies, but tools and processes to be able to start solving for some of the challenges that we have? So let's dive into it. My name is Don Meyer, as you heard. I'm Director of Product Marketing here at Palo Alto Networks. I'm focused on Prisma Access and Prisma SASE. And so what is SASE and where did it come from? Over the last couple of years, we've been hearing this thing called SASE. And what happened in the last 2 years is it's made the need for a SASE solution, which stands for Secure Access. What does it stand for again? Secure Access Service Edge, SASE. SASE is really a modernization approach to what's been happening, not just in the last 2 years, but what started off several years ago. But over the last 2 years has really kind of come to a head. And that is, the last 2 years have challenged us in many, many significant ways. And one of the most fundamental ways it's challenged us is how we consider work. Work for many of us now is not a place we go to anymore, but a function that we do. And that function is more frequently done anywhere but a corporate office. And as a result of that, we're seeing that the technologies that we had in place that were more best practice or kind of best effort, if you will, in terms of bringing users back to some kind of repository or some place where they get access to their data, really aren't working, as more and more users now are predominantly outside of corporate offices. At the same time, the things that we're accessing to be able to do our functions, to get our jobs done, it's also changing dramatically. In the past, things used to be housed at a data center or living within the confines of our corporate offices. All our applications and data were housed there. We would tunnel back to that place where all our security was, and it provide us all the necessary things that we needed to be able to validate who we were and provide the secure access to the things we needed. Well, fast forward to the last couple of years, and especially in the last 2 years, as we've been dealing with the pandemic, more and more of those applications, more and more of that data is now anywhere but the corporate offices. We've seen an explosion of SaaS applications. We've seen an explosion of different internet services being utilized. And more frequently, what we're seeing is users requesting direct access to the application as opposed to a network or a network subset or a subnet. That has some pretty interesting implications on what we need to do, not only in terms of facilitating that connectivity, but how do we think about security? And the last piece of it is that the tools we're now using to be able to do our work, to do our jobs, to connect with our customers, our employees, using a lot more collaboration tools, which is changing kind of the nature of how we share information, what we do to be able to engage with each other, and how we are now starting to leverage different tools to share more and more sensitive information. Again, every one of these different trends has interesting security implications to it. And when we dive into the architectures that we've implemented to try and address what was prior to the pandemic, we see that it really is not optimized for today's environment. Case in point is that most of those technologies we had were meant to backhaul users wherever they were to some central place to be able to provide all the necessary services, do all the necessary scrubbing, all the necessary authentication, blah, 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 blah. Well, that was fine when everything lived on-prem, but as more and more things are living off-prem or living out in the internet, having to hairpin out of that particular substrate of product to go to the internet directly, which is what I want to do anyway, creates a lot of latency, creates a bit of a performance gap, and it's really an unpleasant experience for users. So we've seen a lot of users bypassing this architecture altogether and going directly to their applications. As a security guy, that makes me very nervous when people are bypassing the things I want them to do. So try to find a way to solve for that. And what did we start doing? We started implementing additional security services, whether they were CASB tools, SWIG tools, DLP tools, other tools that we needed to be able to allow our users to now start getting access to the different applications and the data that they requested. Well, the problem with this approach is that I'm replicating security stacks every time there's a new question or a new opportunity to extend a service to an employee. The more and more of these things that I'm deploying, the more complex it is to actually understand what's going on and be managed through all that. This really isn't the right approach. And this is something that Gartner honed in on even back in 2019, prior to the pandemic. It's more users and more data are outside the corporate controls, and we're throwing more and more technology at the problem. It's creating a situation that's completely untenable, completely disjointed in terms of its ability to give us any visibility or any control. We don't think that this is the right approach. And in fact, Gartner says this is certainly the wrong approach. What you need to start thinking about doing is consolidation. Consolidation is going to solve for a lot of interesting things. More importantly, consolidation is going to give you back the visibility and control you need to facilitate the right types of exchanges with your employees to their applications. A great way to start thinking about that is via a platform approach. And it's something that at Palo Alto Networks, we've been working on very, very closely for a long time. And in fact, if you look at how we've been architecting our solutions, we started with an NGFW platform or an NGFW product, if you will, a physical form factor box that could do all these wonderful security things and could adopt more and more functionality as we saw the threat landscape evolving, as we started to see our IT infrastructure changing. Went from physical form factors to virtual form factors to now being able to be deployed in different places like AWS or Microsoft Azure or GCP or other infrastructure as a service infrastructures. What we also started to see, though, as well, is that the need to extend consistent security services to employees was starting to become a bigger issue that a lot of organizations were struggling with addressing. Since most users wanted to use the internet to get access to internet-facing applications and services, it makes sense to deploy a services edge in the intranet. And that's where our SASE solution came into being, or our security as a service offering came into being. What's great about this, though, is it's leveraging the same fundamental operating system, the same security capabilities that we've been honing our skills on for the past 15 years, just in a different form factor. So a lot of customers say, well, is it just NGFW in the cloud? Sort of, kind of, yes and no. I mean, it fundamentally is kind of that core Palo Alto Networks functionality that you know and love and that you've been trusting to protect your networks. Now it's delivered as a service. And what that allows us to do is extend those same capabilities, that same robust, best-in-class security capability, as close to the user as possible, whether that user is connecting from a branch office, whether they're connecting from a home office, whether they're connecting on the road, at an airport, at a hotel. One hop to be able to get the same security services to allow the user then to get access to their applications. That's what we're going to be focusing in on, is that side of the business, the SASE side of the business. And it truly is derived from that same best-in-class security capabilities we've been honing our skills on, fully integrated across the board and optimized to provide the best user experiences. So let's dive into it. Let's talk a little bit about what our SASE solution is and what it's really designed to allow you to be able to do.
Yep.
Yep. Is there a question or?
Pretty good. Hang on one sec. Sorry, I got some.
I think it was just background noise.
Okay, no worries, no worries. So SASE, as defined by Gartner, is networking and security delivered in the cloud to allow any remote user to be able to get access to whatever services and applications they need. Again, networking and security delivered as a service. What we have done is taken that to heart, really to heart, and provided a very robust infrastructure to allow us to deliver the most complete SASE architecture to the marketplace. At its core, our networking as a service layer is fed by our Prisma SD-WAN portfolio, something that we brought to market a couple of years ago via an acquisition of a company called CloudGenix. CloudGenix we found to be one of the most forward-thinking and forward-leaning organizations that were really doing interesting things with SD-WAN and solving for a lot of the challenges that we've seen legacy vendors struggling to deal with. We liked it so much, we integrated with them. We liked it even more once we integrated that we had to go out and buy them. So about 2.5 years ago, we bought CloudGenix outright and absorbed it into the Prisma, or I should say, the Palo Alto infrastructure, and called it now Prisma SD-WAN. Prisma SD-WAN is a brilliant, lightweight, very easy to use, but very capable on-ramp to get into the next layer, which is our security as a service layer, where you'll see all the necessary functions to be able to solve for all the necessary use cases that our remote users have in terms of trying to get access to the right services and data they need, including firewall as a service, including CASB or Cloud Access Security Broker, providing security and data protection for SaaS-based applications, ZTNA or Zero Trust Network Access, and not your dad's ZTNA solution. We actually do some things a little bit differently. We'll talk about that in a second, as well as Cloud SWG to be able to facilitate just users getting access to the internet things that they need to get access to. What's great about that is that fundamentally all those capabilities are built into the product. So whatever use case you're trying to solve for, you can start off with perhaps internet-facing applications, just turn on and deploy the SWG capabilities, but then you have the other capabilities at the standby, ready to be enabled if your needs change, if your use cases evolve, and as your users start requesting access to more and more things. On top of that robust security as a service layer, we have what we call our digital experience monitoring, or in our terminology, our autonomous digital experience management solution. And what that does is it provides that last piece of the puzzle, full visibility across the entire service delivery chain from the end user to his application, so that you can see what's going on, where potential issues might arise, where potential bottlenecks might be. If I can see things and I can understand them, then I can start to be able to enact some type of remediation around any problems that arise. And we're just starting to scratch the surface on that. We'll dive into that a little bit more. So fundamentally, our architecture is delivering convergence. We're converging networking, security, and now digital experience management without compromise, without compromising performance, without compromising manageability, without compromising experience. All of which from our best-in-class, best-of-breed security capabilities to really deliver an exceptional user experience. And when you start diving into each of these different components, what they're really designed to do is facilitate any user from any location, even on campus now, facilitating their access to whatever application, irrespective of where it lives. How do we do that? How do we do that fundamentally? Let's dive into it. Starting off with the Prisma SD-WAN portfolio. Our Prisma
Sorry,
SD-WAN
Don.
portfolio. Yes. Was there a question?
I was just gonna, no, yeah, I was just gonna, I thought of something that we've kind of discussed a little bit before, and I want to make sure that I bring this up. I don't know if it's the right time, but if you're free to introduce it here, is that entry level, right? I think a lot of people have, obviously, people on this call may have deployed the next gen firewall within their branches, within their head offices, even in the cloud, and are looking. It could be that they have, God forbid, another brand of technology within their environment. That the road towards SASE can be a little confusing when you have, let's say, a different SD-WAN provider than you have firewall and all that. So just I know that we talked about it, and you may touch on it, but I'm curious. Do I need to replace things to get going with a SASE architecture, right?
That is a great question, Eva. I really appreciate you bringing that up at this stage. Fundamentally, no. That might not be the case with other vendors, but with Palo Alto Networks, we have a very open platform, and we take an open platform approach. If your organization is struggling connecting your remote users, wherever they may be, to whatever applications and services that they need, if you're suffering from performance issues, if you're suffering from visibility, enforcement issues, you just want to consolidate things, yeah, you can start to implement our SASE architecture in a variety of different ways, whether it's looking at, as we got on the screen here, how do I transform my branch offices and make them cloud ready? Get them the right tools, so I'm not backhauling traffic back to a data center, but actually going direct out to the cloud. A lot of organizations are starting off in this particular direction by just replacing outdated legacy routing equipment. It's very expensive and requires a lot of manual intervention with our Prisma SD-WAN portfolio. Reason being is that it's designed to be very lightweight at the branch office, and it's zero-touch provisioned. You can send these boxes to whatever locations you need to with very simple instructions: open box, rack, plug in, turn on, walk away. The box is designed to call out to its home, pull down its configuration, set up its connection all by itself without requiring truck rolls, without requiring you having dedicated IT staff on hand. What's more, it's automated too. It runs best practices audits all the time against its configuration, against any process that's running, and it identifies if there is an issue or a problem and auto remediates itself. So it can keep itself up and running, keep it optimized for whatever the environment is. And it also learns. It's learning the applications, it's learning the sessions, it's learning the amount of bandwidth associated with different things. It can help you identify the different opportunities for enhancing either configurations or policies or things of that nature as well. And at the same time, it is designed around security. It is a secure conduit into Prisma Access, or a secure conduit back to wherever it needs to go to. And at the same time, we're incorporating some NGFW capabilities within the box itself to provide some very fundamental security capabilities right there on-prem, to allow you, again, the opportunity to start moving into more of a SASE architecture in a very, very fundamental way, without requiring a whole lot of truck rolls or dedicated IT staff or a lot of heavy configurations. That being said, if your primary use case is, I want to alleviate having to backhaul traffic and I want to get my users direct to the internet as quickly as possible, well, you can bring Prisma Access into any environment without having to change whatever those access on-ramps are. We support standards-based IPsec, and we can terminate standards-based IPsec tunnels within Prisma Access. So if you're using a Cisco router, heaven forbid, or a competitive firewall, or even our Palo Alto Networks firewalls, and you don't want to backhaul that traffic because it's just a pain in the arse, and it's just your users are complaining, and it's just a big bottleneck in terms of performance, point those solutions to Prisma Access. Allow the cloud to be able to absorb, scale, grow, shrink, and understand the traffic from that fundamental perspective a lot better than what you can manage on-prem, without having to change anything. All you're doing is just pointing that particular on-ramp device to our cloud without having to change anything. It's just a change of a route, if you will, to where we need to be. You don't need to change your underlying infrastructure. You don't need to replace any equipment. You just absorb that right away and start addressing the core needs that you have. And then over time, as your needs change and as things start to evolve, you slowly start to absorb other functionality or other ways of utilizing our Prisma SASE infrastructure. So Great question. It's not an easy question to answer because there isn't a one size fits all, if you will. But the product is open and it's flexible enough to allow whatever your use case will be to be able to be solved in a very fundamental, easy to absorb, easy to configure way that gives you a great foundation to start building upon. Perfect
No,
question.
that's perfect. I think, as practitioners, we're always, especially if we're thinking of implementing that zero trust, model or architecture within our organizations, having different areas where those controls can be applied in different ways just gives us the flexibility to do the right thing when it comes to building a zero trust architecture. So it's good to know that integration is a big piece, and having ability to put controls at different areas. We may not use a control in all the areas, but having that flexibility to choose the right area to put the right control is very important. So no, thank you for that, Tom.
Fantastic. And to that effect, I mean, if, again, SD-WAN isn't what you're looking to solve for, but maybe there's a security issue. Maybe I don't want to have to deploy firewalls at all the branch offices. Again, I don't have the IT staff to be able to support that. I don't have, the ability to manage and maintain, physical appliances at these different locations. You can start off with firewall as a service based on Prisma Access. Again, point your router to us. We are, quite honestly, the best NGFW that is delivered as a cloud service that you can possibly find. And if you're already using Palo Alto in other areas, you manage it as just another firewall. So you don't have to learn anything new. You don't have to go and do anything differently in terms of the management, in terms of how you look at policies, how you enforce policies, and how you report on things. And because it is based on our NGFW PAN-OS operating system, it's bidirectional, looking at all ports, all protocols, and it'll secure with all the same services that you can leverage on your premises equipment as well. So it's a great way to get into that architecture. And once you've got that foundational layer established, like I said, once that cement dries, you can actually start building upon that a whole lot more additional use cases or additional opportunities for leveraging this great platform. Firewall as a service is definitely a great opportunity, but so is looking at how do we secure access now to the plethora of SaaS applications that we're adopting. And as organizations are adopting more and more, and we're seeing from the research that we've been doing, the average number of SaaS applications that most medium to large enterprises have right now is anywhere between 98 to 150 applications. I mean, imagine that. Each one of these applications could be running a specific function, but sometimes these are for other purposes. Sometimes it's shadow IT. Our teams are out there doing things. We understand it. Maybe it's not necessarily a sanctioned app that we're allowing, but it's an allowed app, so we're okay. I should know what it is. I should understand what it is, and I should be able to control who and what get access to it so that I can keep my organization safe. And as more and more applications come online, as more and more adoption takes place, the less understanding I have because I just can't keep up with it. This is a great use case to try and get a handle on the explosion of SaaS applications that are going on in the organization. Leveraging Prisma Access, just filtering all of that traffic that's going out to those SaaS applications, and let Prisma Access understand fundamentally what your applications are, who's using them, and why. And then you can start to put the right policies in place about controlling shadow IT, controlling collaboration. Add DLP to the mix, and you can actually start to look at how do I protect the sensitive data that's there. Great use case, especially today as we're starting to get more and more collaboration around SaaS-based applications like WebEx or Zoom or other things like that, where we are starting to see that we have very limited control over what we can do to keep that data secure. Another use case that we talked a little bit about was ZTNA, or Zero Trust Network Access. What ZTNA really was designed to do was provide a least privilege access, a portal, if you will, from the user to just that application without having access to anything else, just that application. What's interesting about ZTNA is that the need for it has really arisen as a result of, again, this hybrid workforce model that we now offer, where users' applications are all over the place, and it's very hard to see, what is going where and why, and how do I get control over it. And when you multiply that by how many remote employees we have now, our attack surface has expanded dramatically, and we need to get control. ZTNA promises us to be able to get some control. But not all ZTNA solutions are created equal. Unfortunately, there are some interesting flaws with some 1.0 or current implementations, if you will, from other vendors that from our perspective, we fundamentally fix. Zero trust should be about least privileged access. It should be about how do I ensure that that user is who they are, that device is what it is, going to the right application. To do that, I need context. Well, at our core, what Palo Alto Networks came out with in the NGFW was a way to start gathering context that was necessary based on what was going on. Context around applications. We have a tool called App ID that we patented that sits on our devices, and it just gathers information about what the applications are. It doesn't need to translate an application into an IP address or a port or protocol to be able to understand fundamentally what it is. And more importantly, once I can understand what it is, I can start to baseline its behavior and understand who's getting access to it and why, and what kind of information is being passed along. If I'm just looking at it at a low-level network function as a port and a protocol based on some IP address, I don't have enough information understanding what fundamentally it is to make the right determination about how best to enforce a policy for it. I need context. ZTNA is all about gathering the right context. Once I have that context, I don't want to just say, yeah, you passed all the point checks here, off you go, have fun. No, I want to make sure that that user is continuously doing the right things. I want to continuously verify trust. Zero trust is all about not trusting least privilege access, right? And you should continuously verify trust to ensure that, again, that end user on that end device is actually who they say they are, not masquerading as somebody else. And here's a scary thing to think about. Almost 100% of the breaches that we keep monitoring, that we hear about in the news, they occur on allowed connections. Think about that. All I have to do is pass one time masquerading as somebody else, and I'm allowed access to an application. And once I'm allowed access to that application, most ZTNA solutions have no way to stop me from doing things I shouldn't be doing. At Palo Alto Networks, we don't think that's the right approach. We think that you should have controls even after that connection is established. After we've verified that one time you are who you say you are, we'll come back again and say, okay, are you really who you say you are? Based on what we've seen you do, you may be doing something different, or based on our understanding of your profile, you're doing things that we don't quite understand. We're going to push you off to the side until we can figure out what the hell is going on here. That's the fundamental difference with Palo Alto Networks, is we do this continuous trust assessment on and on and on during the course of that entire connection to that application. In addition to that, we also do continuous threat inspection. Yeah, once that connection is established, I could inadvertently be introducing some malicious content, or I could be trying to, I don't know, do something fundamentally weird to that application. Should I be allowed to do that? Traditional solutions have no visibility into that. There's no middleman in the way to get to tell you what's going on. Our solution, again, our approach, different. We don't think that's the right way to do it. So we'll continuously look at the traffic that's going across into that application, out of that application, bi-directionally, to see if things are being introduced that maybe malicious, or maybe benign, maybe intentional or unintentional. But fundamentally, we can see it, we can stop it. We're also going to look at data, make sure that, again, the data coming in and out of that application is not siphoning off, sensitive things that user shouldn't have access to or shouldn't be using in other ways. And we're also going to do that ubiquitously across all applications, not just looking at the private data center applications, but any application, whether it's a CASB or SASE application, whether it's an internet-facing application, whether it's an application that lives in AWS or Azure or wherever it might be. So fundamentally, we take the principles of zero trust and really apply them to the most fundamental way that we can to ensure the best possible security outcomes. What does that mean? It gives you back control, complete control and visibility of what's going on in your network. So you can realistically extend security services out and embrace a hybrid workforce without all the headache, without all the confusion. Oh, and the great thing is, it's all connected into a single product, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. The last use case we see a lot of organizations starting their journey with is around Cloud SWG. And again, Cloud SWG, we've talked a lot about it. It is connecting users to whatever internet-facing application or service that they might need. A great way that we've seen organizations leveraging Prisma Access is migrating off legacy proxy types of solutions. Proxy solutions have been around for a long, long time, predominantly have been designed to be deployed in-house. We're starting to see a lot more cloud-based solutions come up, but there's still a ton of legacy premises-based proxy solutions that are out there. The hard thing is migrating off a proxy architecture to something that's supporting proxy, but also encompassing more and more applications and more services is difficult. It requires an entire re-architecture. What Prisma Access offers is an explicit proxy functionality. We can absorb pack files, which would configure your browser to go directly to Prisma Access to be able to get all the security scrubbing that we do, so that you can leverage your existing proxy architecture without having to do anything else. Just again, point your users to our cloud and let us do all the heavy lifting in terms of that enforcement. And that would be a consistent enforcement across all the different security services, so that when you're ready to move off of a proxy architecture and start looking at how do I apply the same types of security capabilities across all my applications, all my locations, you've got that foundation right there, ready to be built upon, ready to extend to wherever it is that you need to. And lastly, one of the key areas that we see, again, a lot of interest in is, okay, now most of my employee base is remote. I have no idea what's going on in that last mile. I'm getting inundated with a lot of help desk tickets saying, hey, connectivity is bad. I can't get access to WebEx. Hey, my session is slow. Something's going on. Help, 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 help. Well, typically IT would look at what port that particular endpoint was connected to, all the different hops from that port to the different server that it's going after, and all that fun stuff. I don't own the infrastructure anymore. I can't see what's going on at that last mile. I don't know what's happening from beyond my cloud to the end user's domain. What Autonomous Digital Experience Management allows us to do now is to get visibility there. We can see now every single hop that particular transaction has to take to be able to get to our cloud, and then from our cloud out to the different applications. Again, start off fundamentally with visibility. If I can see things, now I can start to react to them, and I can start to apply policy and or remediation to be able to fix things. So I see a particular node as being oversaturated, there's a lot of activity going on there. I can redirect from this node to another node and make sure that, hey, this particular session is going to be optimized to be able to deliver the right performance. That's the type of thing that we're able to deliver with our Autonomous Digital Experience Management solution. And the great thing is it's natively built into our SASE architecture. So again, you have that foundation that can apply itself to a variety of different use cases to get you into the product right away. And from there, just build upon that product to be able to address a lot of different use cases and really just modernize your architecture so that you can satisfy the needs of your remote employees, your remote locations, maintain visibility and control. There's a lot more we can dive into. I wanted to pause here and see if there are any other questions that have come up, Ivo, if anyone has any questions fundamentally on kind of our approach and our philosophies with regards to these things.
I'm keeping an eye out here for questions. I haven't seen any pop up in the chat, but obviously, folks, if they wanna, if they can send me a direct message. They can send in a question for everyone in the chat, or unmute yourself and speak as well. I think this is a fantastic breakdown on all the different pieces. One of the challenges that I think a lot of people have with SASE is it's everything to everyone, and different vendors approach SASE in different ways, right? And there was really and I think we kind of covered this a little bit, and then I just saw another question here, which is, how do I get started with SASE? Do I have to implement it all or start with specific use cases? We touched on that a little bit, and I think it's worth revisiting to some extent, but I think, I think users are, there's a lot to consume out there when you're making that selection from a SASE tool perspective. And I think you've given a good detail on everything that's in the package, right? And how that all connects together. So
perfect. And to go back to the question, how do I get started? Is it an all or nothing kind of encompassing endeavor? It can be. Should we focus on use cases? That's actually a really smart way to start thinking about it. Where fundamentally are we suffering the most? Where's the biggest headache and biggest challenge that we have? It's not being satisfied with our existing solutions. Sometimes it's VPN, right? Sometimes our VPN infrastructure It's worked in the past, but it's not working anymore. It's not getting us the right results, and it's not giving us the right security that we need in today's environment. That's a great opportunity to say, well, maybe we stop backhauling traffic back somewhere and we just point it out to the cloud. Let the cloud absorb it, because the cloud can then grow and it can shrink and it does all the fun things that a cloud does. I don't have to manage that infrastructure anymore. Someone else is going to manage it for me. I just set the policies and away we go. That could be a great way to start getting into this architecture and start leveraging our cloud services to be able to provide the right security, whether it's protecting a branch office or whether it's protecting a remote user. Then we can start thinking about the other areas that we're struggling around. I'm struggling to get good visibility and control around SaaS applications. I can start to bring in some of the CASB functionality to really start absorbing some of that into this infrastructure and let it start to understand the different applications. Let it run its AI and ML capabilities to really start giving me a better picture of what is going on, where the possible threats might be, and give me better data so I can make better decisions on. The hard part with the hodgepodge of stuff that we have to manage is I've got alarms going off over here, I got alarms going off over there, I got alarms going off over there, and I got to hop from multiple different screens to try and figure anything out. There's nothing that's correlating all this information into a single event, or at least in a single event level view. I have to rely on yet another product like a Splunk or some other SIM tool to be able to try and decipher that for me, because all of these disparate products speak all sorts of different languages. There's no commonality across them. So I'm being inundated with a lot of alarms, and I got to sift through them to try and figure out which ones are the most meaningful, which ones are the most impactful, and which ones do I just get to ignore. When I'm dealing with multiple vendors, it's really, really hard to do so. If I can consolidate that into a single platform where all this functionality, I should say, is working together, well, now I can start to get a better and more clearer picture of what's really going on. That helps me then make better decisions, because now I know what's real versus what's implied. I know what's important versus what I can really ignore. And I can see that really from a fundamental perspective. That's a great way to start looking at how do I modernize? How do I just consolidate a lot of the nonsense stuff that I have to do to really start deriving better outcomes? That's a great way to start looking at how do I bring this technology into my fold. And at the same time, if user experience is an issue, the things that we've been doing with our platform, not only from the CloudGenix side of things or the Prisma SD-WAN side of things, where we are optimizing performance across broadband so we can prioritize different applications and set the right amount of bandwidth and deprioritize other things we don't want to ensure that the mission critical applications have the most bandwidth, the most possible performance available. We're also looking at it from the end user side of things as well. We built our infrastructure around Google Cloud and around AWS. Why did we do that? Those are the most highest performing infrastructures in the world. Those are the infrastructures that run the internet and keep the internet on and available. We figured that's a good place to start. If we trust that that is the performance model that we should be adhering to, let's go there. And not only did we go there, we also got into their private data centers, and we have access to their private fiber, the fiber that connects all their different nodes together across the world. What does that mean? Well, it means that we have a presence now in just about every possible geo in the world, but more importantly, it means our performance is tied to their performance. We have the best possible performance for our architecture that you could possibly get. So from an end user perspective, when I'm trying to get access to a particular application, I'm leveraging the same fabric that runs the entire internet and runs it in such a fundamental way, like Google search is instantaneous, right? Because that's how it's built to do. We're running on that same infrastructure so that we can get you as close to instantaneous as we possibly can. And we guarantee it with SLAs. That's another fundamental difference. If performance is an issue, I'm tired of having to deal with all the help desk tickets. Here's a great way to improve performance of remote users having to get access to their different applications. So I know I'm kind of going all over the place with the different use cases, but it really does boil down to what is the most critical thing in your organization that you got to solve for? And how can you lay the right foundation so that it's not just a point product and it's not going to add to the complexity again, but something that you can continue to build upon and continue to leverage as you go forward. All right. I know there's a lot more in here that we can talk about. I've kind of covered the platform, so I'm not going to dive into a whole lot more detail on this. Did talk a little bit about the cloud scale that we offer. Here are the two different providers that we're leveraging right now to be able to deliver ubiquitous access anywhere in the world at its highest performance. At the same time, as I said before, we are purpose-built as a cloud-native solution. It's not a bunch of Palo Alto Networks next-gen firewall boxes stuck in colos in different parts of the world. No, we actually did the hard work. We built a software solution that can run in cloud environments as a native cloud solution. So we can be spun up and brought to whatever geos are necessary. It gives us a global footprint, but also global scale as well. And we've got over 100 locations in 77 countries to make sure that you've got consistent security with consistent performance everywhere. At the same time, we really did think about how we architect our cloud solution to make it truly an enterprise-grade solution by doing the hard things like providing true data plane isolation. What that is an egress point out of our cloud has a dedicated IP address to every single customer. You have your own IP address, which gives you the opportunity to improve your performance and to keep noisy neighbors from slowing you down. Also means that I won't be whitelisted or blacklisted if in case I have a neighbor that's actually doing something that's a little bit malicious or a little bit misunderstood. Other solutions out there have a commingled or shared data plane. What that means is that, again, if I have a noisy neighbor and I'm on the same IP address as him coming out of this solution, I get affected. My performance slows down. Anyone who's spiking in terms of their traffic is going to slow everyone down who's on that commingled data plane. Likewise, my data could sometimes intermingle, and that's not necessarily a good thing either. We don't want to have any security challenges or any performance bottlenecks with our solution. That's why we've done the hard stuff in terms of making sure that each customer has its own dedicated data plane. And as I mentioned before, we back all this up with some of the best SLAs in the industry, 5 nines in terms of reliability, 10 milliseconds in terms of security processing. That's running all the security services that we were talking about, firewalls, DLP, blah, 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 blah. 10 milliseconds is what we guarantee. And we offer the only SLA for specific SaaS applications as well, guaranteeing that if you are using these applications, you have the best possible performance out there. Again, the differences that we bring to market is that we are doing all the heavy lifting, all the fundamental things that should be done that we're seeing a lot of solutions out there just not doing right. We talked about ADEM. This is a, yep, was there a
Sorry,
question?
Don. No, it's I know we're down to the last 4 minutes. I want to make sure this question gets through. Amandeep Man asked, any ideas about compatibility with existing infrastructure? For example, SD-WAN from another vendor, Palo, firewalls, etc. What's the optimal way to adopt this technology without running into major change? Major change obviously is one of those pieces that that the infrastructure side of the house is going to be the most upset about security about, right? When it's time for us to replace things or move things, downtime is highly important for the rest of the organization, right? And avoiding that from a migration perspective, I think it's where Amandeep is getting to, I hope.
Well, Deep. I think if we had an opportunity to talk with Ivo and his team as well, they can help us to really understand kind of what that might look like. Fundamentally, from our perspective, as I said before, we do support standards-based protocols. So whatever legacy infrastructure, whatever existing infrastructure that you have, chances are you can utilize it and point it to our cloud if you needed to. Again, depending on what it is that you're trying to solve for. You want to consolidate a bunch of security capabilities, here's a great way to do that. You want to facilitate your users getting access to the internet applications in a much more secure and higher performing way, you can do that. Point any existing Palo Alto Networks firewall box to us, point any existing SD-WAN or router that supports standards-based IPsec protocols, point it to us. We'll terminate it there. You don't need to change anything fundamentally. Even if you're using a proxy-based architecture and you want to consolidate that, we'll send down pack files to your users. They will use those pack files to change their browser configuration to be able to go directly to us without having to do anything else. There's no change to their processes. There's no change to the way that they authenticate and do any other function. So realistically, what I'm trying to say is that the integration of Prisma Access into an existing infrastructure is more or less seamless. Yes, there are some things that you need to take into consideration, like what is the use case, what will the policies need to look like, blah, 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 blah. That's where our friends at CDW can help out a lot in terms of that consolidation and that kind of consultative approach. Can really start to put in place the right pieces to help you migrate into this architecture in a very seamless and fundamental way.
Yeah, I think compatibility is one of those big pieces, right? Especially when obviously, doing things in a organized fashion and having a proper project manager, having, things be well installed from a professional services perspective, really bringing that together with Palo Alto's ability to really be compatible with a lot of technologies out there, and make sure that we carry that in a in the least impactful way from an availability perspective is how we see things on the CDW side, together with the Palo Alto team to do that kind of implementation. So Mandeep, hopefully that answers your question. We can definitely go into a if you want to reach out directly, we can absolutely have a much deeper technical conversation with some folks that are smarter than me for sure on how we typically done this. And it gets driven by a number of things, right? It gets driven by compliance. It gets driven by hardware refresh cycles. There's a lot of different pieces that can play into this, but having the tool set and the ability to converge those two together, it's highly important. So
one last thing, the perfect response. One last thing I wanted to share, and that is just, as we have been talking, yeah, it's great to hear it from the vendor's perspective. Oh, you guys think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. I've heard this a million times. All the vendors are. It's another thing to hear it from the industry as well. And we take this very, very seriously. What it is that we're doing, how we're approaching securing today's hybrid workforces, how we're implementing the right tools to be able to do that, how we're integrating them, how we're making it open, how we're trying to solve for some really rather meaningful issues. This speaks volumes in terms of our vision, our approach, and our ability to execute on that. We've received tremendous accolades from the analyst community out there, from the Forrester ZTNA New Wave that just came out last year, put Palo Alto squarely in the leaders area there, thinking that we're doing the right things on ZTNA. When it comes to network security and it comes to the firewalling, again, 10 years in a row, Palo Alto Networks has been blazing the right trails in terms of delivering the right types of capability to keep security focused on what's most meaningful and impactful. And even a brand new area that we just started to get into, SD-WAN and the WAN edge, Palo Alto Networks firmly implanted into the leaders quadrant of the latest Gartner MQ for the WAN edge infrastructure. So obviously the industry thinks we're doing some great things. We've got a ton of customers, and if we had a little bit more time, I'd love to go through some of those customers and what they have done with us. But really, quite honestly, it should give you enough comfort and consideration to understand that when you choose to go with CDW and Palo Alto Networks, we really do have your backs. We really do have your best interests and outcomes in our firmest focus. And if you're already using us, you already know where our approach is, you already know how robust our capabilities are. This is a seamless extension of those capabilities into a cloud delivered service. Same things you know and love, same things that our customers who have been with us for a long time know and love and have been adopting as well. And with that, I know we're right over time, and I really do appreciate everyone's time and attention. If there were questions that you had that we just couldn't answer, please don't hesitate to hit us up again outside of this call or on the next calls as well. And with that, I'm going to hand it right back over to Ivo.
Oh, that's perfect. Thanks, Don. I think there's a lot to unpack here, and there's a lot of great questions that we, a lot of places where we can go in terms of conversation. And then when it comes to InfoSec conversations, I find that I can just keep talking. So we're over time, and this is good, but a pleasure getting to know you, Don. And thank you, folks, for joining. And I look forward to having the next conversation with you guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.